You have read this verse hundreds of times. 2 Chronicles chapter 7 verse 14. If my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven and I will forgive their sin and will heal their land. You have heard it in church. You have heard it at night vigils in Lagos, in Nairobi and Accra. You have heard pastors build entire services around it. You may have prayed it yourself, shouted it, in fact, at 3 a.m, while the congregation around you swayed and wept and reached for the ceiling. And yet there is a word inside that verse that no pastor has fully explained. A Hebrew word. A word that God spoke directly to Solomon in the night after the temple dedication. A word that has been sitting in the most prayed verse in African Christianity for 3,000 years. And when you see what it actually means, not in the translation, but in the original Hebrew, the verse you thought you knew becomes something else entirely, something that requires a great deal more of you, and promises a great deal more in return. Let me take you back to the night God spoke to Solomon, not the Gibeon night, the later night, the one that is less famous, less preached, and far more important for what we are examining today. 2 Chronicles chapter 7 verses 12 through 15. The temple has just been dedicated. 7 days of sacrifices. The entire nation gathered. Solomon's prayer, 44 verses, the longest recorded prayer in the Hebrew Bible. The glory of God descended into the temple in a cloud so thick that the priests could not perform their service. So intense was the divine presence that they had to stop what they were doing and simply stand there. 7 days of this, and then it ended. The people went home. And then the text says, God appeared to Solomon in the night. Again in the night, again in a dream. The first time, at Gibeon in 1 Kings chapter 3, God appeared and asked Solomon what he wanted. Solomon asked for wisdom. God gave him wisdom and everything else. That was the gift. This second appearance is the operating instruction, because at Gibeon God gave Solomon something. At this second nighttime appearance, God gave Solomon a formula, a precise sequence, a conditional mechanism for sustained access to heaven. Listen carefully to what God says. If my people, who are called by my name, will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven, and I will forgive their sin, and will heal their land. 4 conditions, 4 verbs: humble, pray, seek, turn. 4 conditions, and then 3 outcomes: hearing, forgiveness, healing. The covenant framework is exact, it is conditional. God is telling Solomon, and through Solomon, every generation after him, the precise unlocking sequence. And the first word in that sequence is the word I need to show you: humble. In Hebrew, Anah, Aleph, Nun, He, Ayin, Nun, He, Anah. This is the word God chose. And it is not an abstract word. It is not a vague spiritual posture. It is not the sentiment of humility expressed through raised hands or downcast eyes. Let me show you where else this root appears in the Hebrew scriptures. Psalm 35 verse 13, this is David speaking. And he says, I humbled my soul with fasting. The Hebrew, Va'ani Beit Zom Nafshi. The word for humbled, Va'ani, same root. Anah. David does not describe Anah as analogous to fasting, or similar to fasting, or spiritually equivalent to fasting. He says, Anah is fasting. Humbling the soul and fasting are the same act. Now go to Leviticus chapter 23, verse 27. This is the Yom Kippur commandment, the holiest day in the Hebrew calendar, the Day of Atonement, the day on which Israel, as a nation, was to stand before God in complete spiritual recalibration. The Lord says, on the 10th day of this 7th month there shall be a day of atonement. It shall be a holy convocation for you, and you shall afflict your souls. Afflict your souls. In Hebrew, Tanu et nafshotekem, the root, Anah, the same word. The Talmud, Tractate Yoma, is explicit on this point. The primary expression of Anah on Yom Kippur is withholding food from the body. The rabbinical commentary on this verse is unambiguous across every major tradition of interpretation. Afflicting the soul, vananafsh, means fasting. So now you have the word in its full weight. God appeared to Solomon in the night. God spoke to Solomon directly, and the first condition God named, the key that opens every other key in the sequence, was Anah, the same word David used when he described what fasting does, the same word the Torah used to describe the central physical act of Yom Kippur. What the verse says in its original language is this: if my people will fast, Anah, and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear. Fasting comes first, before prayer, before seeking, before turning. The church has been shouting this verse for 100 years while skipping the first word. Now I want to show you the context in which this formula was given. Solomon has just completed 7 years of building the temple, the most ambitious construction project in the ancient world. Timber from Lebanon, gold covering the inner sanctuary, the Ark of the Covenant finally housed in the Holy of Holies, in the exact space built for it. And on the night after the dedication, after fire had come down from heaven and consumed the offerings, after the glory of God had filled the temple, God appears to Solomon in the night and says, I have heard your prayer. And then comes the formula of 2 Chronicles 7 verse 14. Think carefully about the context. The most powerful king in the ancient world, the man who had just completed the most sacred building on earth, the man whose wisdom surpassed every other human mind in history, and the formula God gives him for continued access to heaven begins with the body, not with more prayer, not with more sacrifice, not with more ceremony, with Anah, a physical act of the body, the one act that places the flesh under the authority of the spirit, because that is what fasting does. It is not a spiritual exercise that happens to involve the body. It is a covenant statement made with the body. The body, which in ordinary life asserts its own governance, its hunger, its comfort, its preference, is temporarily placed under another authority. The flesh makes claims. Fasting is the act of answering those claims with a deliberate refusal. And the refusal, in the covenant framework Solomon operated in, carries legal weight in the spiritual order. The first condition is not a mood, it is an act. There is another dimension of this I need to show you. The Key of Solomon, the Clavicula Salomonis, is a grimoire attributed in its preface to Solomon's own instruction to his son Rehoboam. The text presents itself as Solomon passing down the operational knowledge of how to access spiritual authority. Scholars date the extant manuscripts variously across the medieval period, but the preface frames its content as older, as the transmission of what Solomon himself practiced. Most people, when they encounter the Key of Solomon, focus on its later sections. The seals, the arrangements of spirits, the geometric figures. But the preface, the part that comes before all the operations, contains something more fundamental. Before any spiritual work, the operator must first purify body and soul. The text specifies, through fasting, prayer, confession, abstinence, and ritual baths. Fasting comes first, not as an optional enhancement, not as an additional practice for the particularly devout, as the gate. The preface of the Key of Solomon presents fasting as the preparatory condition without which none of the following material can function. You do not access spiritual authority in Solomon's own operational framework with an unprepared body. And Solomon is not presenting this as a technique he invented. He is presenting it as what he himself did. The Anah is the opening of the gate. Before wisdom can enter, the body must be prepared to receive it. Now I want to show you a pattern that runs through the Hebrew scriptures with a consistency that cannot be dismissed as coincidence. 3 days. Esther, chapter 4, verse 16. Go, gather together all the Jews who are in Susa and fast for me. Do not eat or drink for 3 days, night and day. I and my attendants will fast as you do. When this is done, I will go to the king. What was at stake? The survival of an entire people. What preceded the breakthrough? 3 days without food or water. The fast came before the opening, not during, not after, before. Jonah chapter 1. Jonah inside the great fish for 3 days and 3 nights. 3 days in the darkness before the fish released him and his mission opened. Acts chapter 9, verses 3 through 9. Paul on the Damascus road. He encounters the risen Christ. He falls to the ground. He gets up. He is led to Damascus. And for 3 days he neither ate nor drank. 3 days without food. 3 days of complete physical emptiness. 3 days of the body stripped of all its ordinary claims. And then Ananias comes. And then Paul receives the Holy Spirit. And then his eyes open, literally and spiritually. And then his mission begins. 3 days, not 2, not 4, 3. You know the other one. 3 days before the resurrection. 3 days is the recurring biblical interval for the collapse of the old order and the opening of something new. This is not arbitrary. Something happens on the 3rd day. Not metaphysically, not as an abstract spiritual timetable, but physiologically, inside the human body, inside the human consciousness. By the 3rd day of a fast, something that was there before is no longer there. The hormonal noise of digestion and hunger expectation has broken. The body has stopped demanding its next meal with the same urgency. And what replaces that noise is something the great fasting traditions across every civilization have independently documented. The Islamic Sufi tradition calls it kashf, an unveiling, a lifting of the ordinary membrane between the material and the immaterial. The great Sufi masters were unanimous. The depth of prayer entered a qualitatively different register on the 2nd or 3rd day of extended fasting. And this is not a fringe observation. In the tradition of Ramadan, the last 10 nights, the Ashara al-Akhira, are set apart as the holiest period of the holy month, not the first nights, not the middle nights, the last. Because the tradition holds, across 14 centuries, that something opens in the body and in the spirit only after sustained days of fasting. Laylat al-Qadr, the night of power, is sought in that final stretch precisely because the discipline of the preceding days has prepared the body to receive it. Solomon's 3-day threshold and Islam's deepest fasting experience point to the same mechanism from opposite directions. West African traditional practice, documented particularly in the Igbo, Yoruba, and Akan frameworks, describes a shift in consciousness that begins on the 2nd night of fasting, in which what was previously inaccessible becomes accessible. West African Pentecostalism, Mountain of Fire and Miracles Ministries, the RCCG Winners Chapel, has built entire revival frameworks on the 3-day Esther fast. And the testimonies across these traditions are strikingly consistent. The breakthrough does not come on day 1. It comes on day 2 or day 3. They are not reporting a theological belief. They are reporting an experience that Solomon built into his operational method, an experience that the Bible documents across 5 distinct occasions, spanning more than a millennium. An experience that begins, always, with the word Anah. Let me tell you about a moment I have thought about many times since. I was in my 2nd year of graduate study at SOAS, late 20s. I was preparing a seminar paper on the covenant response formula in 2 Chronicles chapter 7, specifically on the internal logic of the 4 conditions in verse 14. My supervisor for that seminar was a compact Scottish Old Testament scholar named Dr. Cameron, dry, precise, absolutely not a man you would describe as spiritually inclined. His religion, if he had one, was his methodology. I gave him a draft of my paper. He read it, set it down on his desk. He looked at me over his glasses. And he said, not as spiritual counsel, not as pastoral advice, not even as a suggestion. He said it the way you might correct a factual error in a student's footnotes. You have done the lexical work on Anah, have you tried it? I was not sure I had understood the question. I said, tried what? He said, the method, the one you have described. You have analyzed the word. Have you done what the word describes? It was an academic dare. He was not telling me to have a spiritual experience. He was telling me that a scholar who analyzes a practice without performing it has incomplete data. I was 28 years old. I fasted for 3 days, not for spiritual reasons, or not primarily for spiritual reasons. I did it so that I could say honestly in the seminar that I had done what the word described, that my analysis of Anah was not purely theoretical. I kept my notebooks open. I did not eat. I drank water. I continued working. Day 1 was inconvenient. I was hungry. I was somewhat irritable. I was irritated at Dr. Cameron for putting the idea in my head. Day 2, something changed. I cannot fully account for it in academic language. The paper I had been struggling to articulate, the argument I could see but could not quite reach, suddenly became clear. I wrote 12 pages in one afternoon. The argument assembled itself with a precision I had not previously managed. I filed it as interesting data, presented the paper the following week. Dr. Cameron read the final version. He looked up and said, with the understatement of a man who does not hand out compliments, "This is considerably better than the draft." He said nothing else. 10 years later, I was back at Solace, cross-referencing Leviticus 23, verse 27, Tanu et nafshotekem, with the broader usage of the Anah root across the Psalter. I opened my old seminar notes, my own handwriting, second year graduate studies, Anah, Psalm 35, verse 13, 2 Chronicles 7, verse 14. The body is the first condition. I had known this for 10 years. I had done it once, at 28, to finish a seminar paper. I sat for a long time. Dr. Cameron, the secular Scottish academic who had no discernible faith commitments that I was aware of, had issued a challenge that was, without his knowing it, an instruction from the text itself. Have you tried it? I had not. I did. And the thing I needed to finish became clear with a precision I could not have manufactured. I still find that difficult to fully account for. But the data is the data. And 20-something years later, I am still doing what the word describes. Now let me show you Solomon's 3-day method as it emerges from the combined evidence. This is not a formula I am constructing. It is a synthesis of what 2 Chronicles 7, Esther 4, the key of Solomon's preface, and the Talmudic fasting framework each contribute independently as convergent testimony. 3 days, 3 specific days. Day 1. At sunset, you begin, not after dinner when it is convenient. At sunset, the Hebrew day begins at sunset, and Solomon's operational framework follows the Hebrew temporal structure. Before you stop eating, speak aloud what you are doing and why. Not a prayer asking for something, a declaration of intent, a covenant statement of what you are entering. Say this, or something like this, in your own words. I am entering the place of Anah. I am aligning my body with my prayer. I am not refusing food to obtain something from God. I am refusing food because for the next 3 days, my body is not governed by its own hunger. My prayer is larger than my body's claim. I am becoming the prayer. This is precise covenant language. You are declaring that for the next 72 hours, the flesh is not in governance. The prayer is. That first evening, open Psalm 69, verse 10. David writes, I wept and humbled my soul, ananafshi, with fasting. Read it aloud, not as a petition, as a recognition of what you are currently doing. David's words become your present tense. Take no food from that sunset to the next. Water is permitted. This follows the Esther fast model, which the text identifies as complete fasting, while the body is sustained. The Yom Kippur, complete abstinence, no food, no water, is a specific liturgical category. Solomon's operational fast, as transmitted through the Esther model, follows the bread and water on day 3 structure I will describe. Day 1 is the declaration. The body has been told what is happening. Day 2. This is the hard day. This is the day that separates those who complete the fast from those who negotiate with it. By the morning of day 2, the flesh has begun making arguments. It is very persuasive. It has many arguments. They range from the reasonable to the desperate. It will tell you that you have already made your point. It will tell you that God is not so literal. It will tell you that your work is suffering, your concentration is poor, and this entire exercise is self-defeating. Solomon would have had a name for this. In the framework that produced the Testament of Solomon, in which the flesh itself has legal standing in the spiritual order, in which every human appetite can be exploited as an opening, the flesh does not simply inconvenience you on day 2, it files a legal brief. Do not negotiate. Twice on day 2, morning and evening, speak 2 Chronicles 7, verse 14 aloud. Not as a prayer requesting the promise, as a statement of what you are currently doing. Lord, I am humbling myself. I am praying. I am seeking your face. You are not petitioning. You are reporting your compliance with the condition. The formula is being fulfilled. The first condition is being met with the body right now. Something shifts on day 2. Not dramatically, not with the clarity you might hope for, but the quality of the interior silence changes. The body's noise begins to recede, and something else starts to take up the space. This is what every tradition that has documented extended fasting across cultures and centuries has described. The Nigerian prayer warriors at Mountain of Fire know it is coming. The Sufi masters named it kashf. The African grandmothers who fasted 3 days before major decisions felt it without having a theological term for it. It is not supernatural in the sense of being beyond nature. It is what the body becomes capable of when it is no longer spending all its energy managing its own hunger. Day 3. By the morning of day 3, something has shifted. I am not saying this as a theological claim you are asked to accept on faith. I am saying it because the biblical record says it across 5 distinct occasions. The Islamic tradition confirms it, the African traditional practice confirms it, and my own experience, one time at 28 motivated entirely by academic commitment, confirmed it. The third morning is different from the first. In the afternoon of day 3, before you break the fast, do one specific thing. Write down what you are asking heaven to open, not generally. Specifically, this is not a minor detail. It is the most important act of day 3. Solomon at Gibeon did not ask for a general blessing. He did not ask for prosperity, or for protection, or for victory over enemies. He asked for wisdom, the specific thing he needed for the specific role he carried. God gave him the specific thing he asked for. He also gave him what Solomon had not asked for, but the specific request received a specific answer. Write it down. The specific door, the specific thing you have been praying for without breakthrough. Not the general prayer for blessing over your family, the particular situation. The closed door you have circled in prayer for months or years without it opening. Write it down by name. Then, at sunset on day 3, break the fast. Before anything else, before the full meal, before the food you have been thinking about for 3 days, break the fast with bread and water, the simplest possible form of eating, the covenant elements, not a celebration, not compensation for 3 days of abstinence, bread and water. And as you eat, speak one sentence aloud, not a prayer, not a request, not a hope, a declaration. Heaven is open, not a request that heaven would open, not an expression of hope that heaven might open. A statement of what the fulfilled condition now makes true. The Anah is complete. The prayer is being made. The seeking is active. The formula has been followed. Therefore, heaven is open. Say it as a fact. Because in the covenant framework Solomon received in the night, it is a fact. I want to say something about what this method is not. It is not extra-biblical mysticism. Every element of what I have described is in the text. The Hebrew word is in the verse. The 3-day mechanism is documented in Esther, in Jonah, in Paul. The key of Solomon's preface transmits a fasting protocol that matches the Levitical framework with precision. The cross-confirmation from Islamic tradition and West African practice adds weight to what is already, on textual grounds alone, a well-established mechanism. And it is not a formula that guarantees a particular outcome. Esther fasted and the people were saved. Paul fasted and his mission opened. Some people I know who have completed 3-day fasts did not receive immediate visible breakthrough. The fast is not a transaction. But what it is, in every case, in every tradition, across 3,000 years of documentation, is a reordering. Anah does not open heaven like a key turns a lock. Anah changes the one who is asking. The body is brought under the authority of the prayer. The flesh is told for 3 days that it does not govern here, and the person who emerges on day 3 is not the same person who started on day 1. Not dramatically different, not transformed in a way that anyone watching would notice, but different in the register that matters for the specific thing being asked. The prayer has been lowered or raised into a frequency that was previously inaccessible. Whether you understand that theologically, physiologically, or as a combination of both, the testimonies across traditions and centuries are convergent enough that I think you have to reckon with it. Something has always stayed with me about the context of this verse. God is speaking to Solomon in the night. after the temple is finished, after the most ambitious act of worship in the ancient world has been completed, after the glory of God has descended in a cloud so thick the priests could not stand. After all of that, God appears to Solomon in the night and gives him a formula for what comes next. And the formula does not begin with more construction, more sacrifice, more ceremony, more prayer. It begins with the body. If my people will Anah, if they will do with their bodies what the word requires, as if God knew, as if the text embedded in its very first word, that every generation after Solomon would pray this verse enthusiastically while quietly stepping around the physical requirement it contains. They will humble themselves, Lord. We are humbling ourselves right now, Lord. But the word means fasting. The verse requires the body, not just the intention, not just the sentiment of humility expressed through a bowed head, not the posture of raised hands in a Sunday morning service. Anah, the physical act of temporary renunciation, 3 days of telling the body that the prayer is larger than its hunger, 3 days of fulfilling the first condition. The church has had the verse the whole time. The verse has had the word the whole time. The breakthrough that Africa has been praying for is not locked behind a secret that was hidden from them. It is locked behind the first word of the verse they already know. They just were never told what the word required. I do one of these every few months now. 3 days. The declaration at sunset on day 1, Psalm 69 on the first evening, 2 Chronicles 7 verse 14 spoken aloud twice on day 2, the specific written request in the afternoon of day 3, bread and water to break the fast, not because I have reached some particular level of spiritual discipline, not because I have constructed a personal ritual that serves my temperament, because I found the word. And a dry Scottish academic, who I am reasonably certain did not practice fasting himself, issued me a challenge that turned out to be more useful than any other instruction I received in 3 years of graduate study. You have analyzed the word, have you tried it? I had not, I did. And the thing I needed to finish became clear with a precision I could not have manufactured on my own. 20-something years later, I'm still not entirely sure what the mechanism is. I have theological accounts of it. I have physiological accounts of it. I have convergent documentation from traditions that never spoke to each other. What I know is that the word is in the verse. The verse has been prayed 1,000,000 times, and the word has been quietly there the whole time, waiting for someone to do what it says. Anah. Align the body with the prayer. 3 days. Write down what you are asking for. Speak the condition at sunset. Do not negotiate with day 2. Break the fast with bread and water on the 3rd evening, and say it aloud. Heaven is open, not as a hope, as a report, because the first condition has been met. And the formula God spoke to Solomon in the night after the temple was finished, in the night after the glory had descended, that formula is still active. The mechanism has not changed. The word has not changed. Anah, the first word, it was always there. Now you know what it means, and now you know what it requires.